Welcome to the ITSP Magazine Podcast Network. You're listening to a new Redefining CyberSecurity podcast with Sean Martin. Have you ever thought that we're selling cybersecurity insincerely, buying it indiscriminately, and deploying it ineffectively? Well, perhaps we are. Let's look at how we can organize a successful information security program that integrates business culture with people, process, and technology to drive growth and protect business value. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com. Devo unlocks the full value of machine data for the world's most instrumented enterprises. The Devo Data Analytics Platform addresses the explosion in volume of machine data and the crushing demands of algorithms and automation. Learn more at devo.com.
Hello, everybody. You're very welcome to a new episode of Redefining Cybersecurity podcast here on the ITSP Magazine Podcast Network. This is Sean Martin, your host. And if you follow me, you know that I'm all about helping organizations and teams within the orgs operationalize security and privacy to enable the business to achieve new heights and protect the revenue and growth that they generate. And the show is Redefining Cybersecurity, but there's certainly a tremendous overlap with privacy in terms of what's possible, what's legal, what's ethical, and not. And therefore, you have policies and controls and measurements and audits and all kinds of stuff on both sides of the fence. And in the middle is the Venn diagram, if you will, where things cross over. Today, we're going to talk a bit more about privacy, and I suspect we'll dip into security as well because it's hard not to. And I'm thrilled to have Damien on today. Damien, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, Sean, and for the invitation. Good to get me the chance to talk about this stuff.
Absolutely, and quick shout out to Katarina Corner, who introduced us. So thanks to her for making the introduction. And speaking of introductions, Damien, if you can share a few words with our audience about some of the things you've done, your current role, and why this topic is one of interest to you.
That sounds good. So I'm Damien. I'm French. I live in Switzerland, in the beautiful city of Zurich. And my main focus is on this concept that we call differential privacy, which is an anonymization, a tool to anonymize data that helps you share or publish data from sensitive information in a safe way. My focus on this in my current role, which is at a startup called Tumult Labs, which is specializing in building and selling differential privacy technology and advice to organizations. Before that, I was leading the anonymization team at Google, and in parallel, or anonymization consulting team at Google. And in parallel, I was working in my PhD thesis in anonymization, computer science, differential privacy at ETH, big university in Zurich.
Love it. A lot of research you've done on it. We'll include a link to your website with links to some of that stuff, and a lot of work, a lot of partnerships as well, I think, with folks looking at this. So I'm very excited to hear about you. And I think you have a lot of experience to share today. So we're going to focus in on it's NIST SP 800-226. So it's an initial public draft of the guidelines for evaluating differential privacy guarantees. And I saw a post from Katarina that prompted me to say, well, I want to learn a little bit more about this, and I figured my audience would want to know more about it as well. So I think before we get into the draft itself, which is open for review and comments until the 25th of January, by the way, can you describe what differential privacy is? Maybe kind of what it is, and if it relates two things, or is different from other things that you think folks would be need to know? I think that would be a great place to start.
That sounds good. So differential privacy is a technology that solves the problem of sharing or publishing information, typically aggregate statistical information or machine learning models from very sensitive data. Typically, when you're an organization that maybe collects a whole bunch of data about usage of your app or demographic information, like for a government agency or any kind of data really, you might want to take some of the data and compile it and share it with a third party. But of course, you can't just do that, like take all your database and give it to like anybody who asks, for obvious security and privacy reasons, right? So one of the ways you can achieve that, we can achieve that kind of business objective, is by anonymizing the data, making the data so that it's no longer personal data. You can share it with somebody and they can learn useful information out of it, do some analytics, statistics, science, but not actually learn that a specific person in the database has some specific attribute, like their demographic information or their credit cards spend or something like this. So in the past, or at least currently, even today, a lot of times when it comes to anonymizing data, people still use legacy techniques, like, oh, we can just remove the names and the obvious identifiers of the data before sharing it. The problem is that we as in computer scientists, experts, we know that it doesn't quite work this way. If you just remove some obviously identifying information like names, email addresses, phone numbers, and so on from the data, it's not going to prevent a motivated adversary from looking at the de-identified data, or we call this de-identified in Europe. In the US, it's more called anonymization, and then finding who exactly is part of that data set and then recovering sensitive data from that information. And there's been many years of research that shows that even techniques that seem a little bit more safe, like things that we call k-anonymity or just aggregation, just compiling statistics, even those can leak some information often, especially when you have large amounts of statistics about the database in question. One very high-profile example where this happens is the 2010 decennial census in the US. So the US, every 10 years, they collect all of the information, a bunch of demographic information about every single person living in the US, and then they compile a whole bunch of statistics that they then publish. In between, after they released some data in 2010, they realized that actually when you take all of that data and all of these statistics, you can use them and do what we call the reconstruction attack to take these statistics and go back to the original data, allowing malicious people to take the statistics and retrieve information that was supposed to be secret. Differential privacy is a mathematical technique that solves these problems, that provably, using strong mathematical foundation, guarantees that you can't do this anymore. That the statistics that you're releasing have a controlled amount of sensitive information in them, in a way that you can guarantee that reconstructions attack are impossible, or that you can't go back to having a single person's attribute based on the shared data.
So let me ask you this, Damien. So a guideline from NIST that turns into a framework or something else that an organization can follow is important, but only valuable, in my opinion, if people follow it. and where I think things become really interesting in the age of AI and massive data sets out there, multiple entities could come together, even an entity can come together and pull multiple data sets together and purposefully not follow that guideline, right? So what are your thoughts on where this fits in? Is it designed to help organizations that want to do the right practices and achieve a level of trust that their customers and their partners can attain? Is that who it's targeted at, or is there a different purpose for this, do you think?
I think you got this right. Basically, the kind of people who are going to be very interested in the guidelines and sort of understanding like where the draft ends up after the comments is people organizations who want to solve this problem of publishing or sharing more data. For example, government agencies who want to publish more statistical information about the people they serve, or non-profits who compile sensitive information and then give it to lawmakers or public policy folks, or organizations that want to monetize the data that they have on their own customers or users. So if you're in this situation today, especially with GDPR and all of the other changes in the compliance space around security and privacy, you might want to make sure that before you do that, you have a clear picture of what the additional risk you're incurring by sharing more data or publishing more data. You want to be able to make sure that the business value you're getting out of this, or the mission value, like the fact that you're accomplishing more of your mission by publishing more data, for example, if you're a government agency, makes sense when it comes to the risk, the additional privacy risk you're taking and you're incurring to the people in your databases. So differential privacy is a way of solving that, but it's still a fairly recent concept. It's been invented a bit over 15 years ago, but it's only since a few years that there's really been software libraries and tools that allow you to use this and to actually generate differential private data more easily. So I think a lot of people who are not experts, a lot of organizations who do not have the deep expertise that folks like other very big tech companies like Google or vendors like us at Tumult Labs have, they want to ask, okay, if a certain vendor tells me they're doing the right thing with my data, if they're helping me generate differential privacy statistics, or if one of my partners claim they're anonymizing data in a certain way, how can I evaluate this claim? How can I make sure that I'm doing the right thing or that my partners are doing the right thing? And this is what I think is really exciting about the fact that NIST is now going to publish guidelines about this. It's because it's going to give people the tools to understand how to evaluate claims of being responsible with data sharing or data publication without needing to get into the deep weeds of how stuff works behind the scenes and what is the exact rights thing that's being done to the data.
So maybe some thoughts on how organizations might approach the guide. I guess, who's the intended audience? Is it limited to privacy folks, or the other one that comes to mind clearly is data owners, so the DPO or other folks who are responsible for privacy and data. Certainly, obviously, based on my introduction, people in security who have the controls and the dials to protect the data in certain cases, but we're talking about enabling data, so maybe controls is the best way to look at this. So who should be reviewing the guidelines and understanding how it fits into the organizational operations?
So I think the two types of roles that come to mind are the one you mentioned. On one side, you've got data owners, people like data protection officers who want to understand how technology like differential privacy fits within their overall approach to privacy governance, data governance, and how it can help, how they can use it to help with their compliance obligations while enabling the business use cases they're interested in. So those are a perfect sort of public for the guide, because it's going to help them understand what are the decisions that need to be made on a specific use case in order to use differential privacy on it. When somebody tells me they've used differential privacy, what do they actually mean? Like which, there's subtleties to the definition and to the context in which it can be applied. What's the exact threat model? What are the exact privacy parameters? What is what we call the unit of privacy? Do we have a reason to believe that the implementation actually satisfies that definition? Because implementing differential privacy is kind of really hard, like cryptography. So all of these questions, I think, are not only, like the guidelines not only provides a list of which questions to ask and how to answer, but also gives them an understanding of like what they should be sort of checking for, what they can be, what they should be, what questions they should be asking, and what are the sort of best answers, best practices in the field. The other public is the people who are actually working with data analysts, data scientists, and so on, because these are often the folks that on the ground, in practice, are going to generate data using differential privacy to share it with other companies or other organizations or with the public at large. They're going to be compiling the data. They're going to be using the libraries. So they're going to be the first that have to answer these questions in practice, like what should my exact privacy notion be? What are the privacy parameters I should use, and so on. Or they might also be the ones that receive the data that was shared by some other organization using differential privacy. And so understanding what happened behind the scenes for them, and how well they should be protecting the data. Is the data really anonymized, or are there some things that are that indicate that care should be taken when handling and passing the data around? I think all of those questions are typically what the guidelines are tackling and offering some answers for.
So let me ask you this. So things like ChatGPT, I know there are other models and interfaces and APIs people can plug into, but that's the one I'm most familiar with. I'm just wondering, can something like that access pools and buckets of data that potentially could expose data that should otherwise remain private, do you think?
I mean, I think we're beyond possibly now, right? I think it's known now that these very large language models trained by various companies are trained on publicly available data. I think mostly. Now that they are being also secretive about it, we don't quite know what data they're being trained on. But one of the hard bits about it is that we know that these models memorize verbatim some information from their training data sets, and that has very big implications for at least two aspects. One of them is copyright, which I'm not an expert of, but we've seen it with the recent lawsuit from the New York Times against OpenAI, where they say, look, if we pass some words to ChatGPT, they just spits out the entire text of New York Times articles. So that's a problem for copyright, right? But the same problem is also a problem for privacy, because if you start, writing a person's name and getting their phone number back, that feels like something that should not happen with these large language models. And my understanding is that these companies are developing sort of ad hoc protections, ad hoc mitigations that try to prevent their users from doing that. But it's fundamentally a very hard problem because I think memorization is very much a phenomenon that's going to happen with classical training of these machine learning models. And so the only question is can you craft a prompt that's smart enough to extract that information from the model? And there, attackers are often much better at doing that than defenders are at protecting it. Yeah. So to come back to differential privacy here, techniques like differential privacy can potentially be used in this context. So there is a lot of papers around how to train a machine learning model in a differentially private way to prevent inadvertent leakage of information. But it's more it's more science than press a button and deploy it in practice as of now, right? Especially at the scale of these very large language models, I don't think things are quite ready for prime time. But this is definitely a direction in which in the AI community, people should and are paying attention to, trying to understand whether we could use these formally proven techniques to make sure that the machine learning models are learning about the global distribution of the data, are learning useful statistics, are able to do what they need to do in terms of either generating outputs or doing classifying, being a classifier or something like this, while preventing the risk that some information is leaked in the process about specific individuals.
So from the organizations that provide the large language models, interfaces, be it web or APIs? Is it? I know the answer is it's their responsibility, but and you said they're doing ad hoc control. So to me, that sounds like oh crap, we forgot, and we need to add this to ensure, or we're uncovering something, so now we need to go back. So in the absence of that, individuals, perhaps, but most certainly organizations who are using these, even these large language models and the data that comes out of their prompts, is there any risk to them not following something like this NIST guideline where they're actually receiving information now? Perhaps not even not knowingly. Yeah.
Right. So I should probably have a couple of disclaimers here. I'm not a machine learning expert. I know how stuff works from a distance, and I have a vague idea of how differential privacy can be implemented in model training, but it's really not my area of expertise. I really am typically focusing on statistical releases, and this is what Tumult Labs, the company I work for, is also focusing on. And I think in cases of an organization receiving data, how to handle the data you're receiving from a third party, I think very often it's sort of a compliance question. And I'm also not a lawyer, so I'm not sure. I don't know what are the implications for this. I completely agree with you that, in principle, the responsibility lies on the shoulders of the people who are making information available in a certain way, or compiling information and then giving it out in a certain way, and so on. I think one of the places where the guidelines could be helpful, or at least to push the industry in a certain directions, is that sometimes you want a vendor to help you build machine learning models on your own data, so that then you can use that machine learning model. Either you can share it with a third party, monetize it, or you can put it in your app as part of a feature or something like this. So in that case, if the data that you have is personal data, if you don't have, if you're covered by GDPR and you don't have a strong legal basis to achieve that, and so you're interested in doing some anonymization to be able to claim from a compliance standpoint that your data is no longer covered by GDPR because it's now fully anonymized data, then training the machine learning model in a differentially right way is could be a real good option. And in some cases, I think, but especially as we make progress on making it easier to use, and as we make it more of a best practice, my hope is that it's going to become a standard practice, not just something that you do if you're in a very high compliance risk use case, or if you're very, very sensitive about your data. I think today, the use cases of differential privacy are growing, but still fairly small for now. At Tumult Labs, we see interest from companies that have already well-established privacy programs, and who really want to sort of get ahead of regulation, get ahead of industry trends when it comes to what's your privacy story like, as well as in extremely regulated areas like government agencies and what data they can publish from the U.S. Census Bureau or the IRS in the U.S. and so on and so forth.
Can you describe a few of the use cases? I'm thinking like financial services.
So in financial services,
housing market, real estate market, healthcare.
Yeah. So basically, I think listeners of your podcast who do security and privacy are probably familiar with the situation where they want to share data with a third party, but they just can't. And it seems like there's, so to give concrete use cases, like in the financial market, you could imagine, wanting to take some data about credit card transactions, or some financial information about individuals, and then monetizing that data in order to, get something useful, learn something useful about market trends, or training a machine learning model to, in collaboration with others, to detect frauds, or to, do financial forecasting to understand where how certain trends are going to evolve in terms of spend and so on. In healthcare, we've seen people exploring differential privacy to do to basically cross the compliance barrier, like want to train a model or get scientific information about how well a certain medication is working, or build a machine learning model that do some classification and diagnostic data, except in use cases where this would not have been possible to do without a very strong anonymization story, because healthcare data is so sensitive, and so we don't want to inadvertently, like hospitals or people who hold medical information don't want this to inadvertently leak outside of the trusted environments. A last use case that I can mention, that's one that's we've been working on at Tumult, and we've published case studies and papers and presentations about it, is the Wikimedia Foundation, where they were interested in releasing data about how many people are visiting Wikipedia pages every day. This is super sensitive because you can imagine that if you take some statistics like this and you figure out that a specific person read a specific article about, I don't know, LGBT topics or certain political topics and so on, especially in certain areas of the world, this could be a really, really sensitive information. So they wanted to make sure that by publishing more statistics about that, they would not endanger the users, and they came to us and we had them publish every day tens of millions of statistics on Wikipedia page views. So this is the kind of use case that differential privacy typically helps with, in addition to the government use cases I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I love it. And what I want to maybe get your thought on now is this word guarantee.
Yeah.
It strikes me, and as I was reading the title of the publication, and I see that word guarantee in there, that makes me cringe a bit. So nothing is absolute, even in technology, in my opinion. The only way is to unplug power, and then but somebody could plug it back in. So the absolute's gone from that even. So talk to me a little bit about the guarantee, and what does that mean? What does that mean to whom, I guess, is the big question.
So I'll give you like a two-sided answer to that question, one positive, and then I'll add some caveats. The positive answer is that you can see differential privacy as the equivalent of, modern cryptography, where cryptography was maybe like 20 or 30 years ago. For a long time in cryptography, the way that the field would move forward is that people would come up with like new techniques to, obfuscate or encrypt data, but they wouldn't formally prove. They wouldn't have like a mathematical proof that, decrypting this was impossible under certain computational assumptions, right? They would like build a scheme that sounded reasonable to them, and then people would come and they would like break it, because turns out that when you don't have sort of a strong mathematical founding for what you're doing, often you're not doing things very well. Today, if you come into a room full of cryptographers and you say, I designed a new cryptographic technique, and here's how it works, and I think it looks really hard to decrypt, so I think it's a good one, people will just laugh you out of the room, right? Nobody will take you seriously. But 30 years ago, it wasn't really the case. It wasn't like that. It was kind of like, it took a long time for people to sort of realize you need a strong mathematical foundation to actually make strong security happen. Differential privacy is the same thing happening in the anonymization space. For almost 20 years, people have been coming up with new definitions of what it means for data to be anonymized, only for like a paper coming up the year after and say, oh, look, like here's a very concrete example in which this solution actually is completely broken and still allows me to retrieve information about individuals. And then differential privacy came around, and this is like fundamentally different, because all of a sudden you could formalize what it means for data to be protected, what exactly is the maximum information that an attacker can gain. And it has some really nice guarantees. Like it doesn't depend on what the attacker can do. It doesn't depend on what auxiliary data the attacker has. If you use it multiple times, you can still keep track of your total risk over time. All notions that all of these sort of nice properties were not, you couldn't show them. In fact, they were wrong with the previous definitions that were shown. So in a sense, this is what the authors of the NIST guidelines are referring to when they say guarantee. It means that there is a strong mathematical foundation for it, and this is why we're pushing very strongly in favor of we should adopt this for all of the anonymization use cases that we have right now, because all of the other stuff, like ad hoc stuff, is just gonna either we know it's broken, either we will know in 5 years that it's broken. No, so that's the flip side.
Let me ask you this.
Yep.
Oh, that's about all right. Now you're going to go to negative. All right, go to negative, then I'll ask my question.
Yeah, you said something super true earlier. It says nothing's absolute, right? Like there's no system that's going to be completely 100% certain. And this is where I fully agree. And this is exactly what this guideline is actually saying, right? The guideline is basically telling, if you look at the way they formalized it, they say, differential privacy from mathematical standpoint, here's what it is, and here's what it's what it protects, what it provides you. And they have this sort of concept of the pyramid, and they say this is at the top of the pyramid is the mathematical definition with the privacy parameter epsilon and the unit of privacy and the sort of the math. But then there's in order for this to make sense, in order for the top of the pyramid to make any sense, you need to also make sure that the bottom of the pyramid is also covered. And here are things the data that you're doing anonymization on, well, it should be well protected, because if an attacker manages to get to the original data, it doesn't matter how well you did your anonymization, right? It's completely, you lost, right? Anonymization is just completely pointless. You should understand your threat model. You should understand okay, who's getting the data? What are they going to use it for? Who are they going to share it with? And understand how this exposure matters for the system you're building. Between the mathematical definition and the actual implementation, again, it's like cryptography, right? RSA is very simple to explain to somebody with a very pretty basic background in math. It's not very complicated from a theoretical standpoint, but implementing it correctly in a way that's safe against all possible attacks, for example, with fault injection and timing side channel attacks and so on and so forth, that's very hard. That's if you do this naively, you will 100% write code that is not actually safe. Differential privacy is exactly the same way, and the guideline explain here's what you should be looking for, for when you use here are the typical vulnerabilities that this implementation step can produce, and you should be aware of them and make sure that you have a strong story to mitigate those and so on. So this is where sort of we have to be careful to say we have to recognize the how much better having a strong mathematical foundation puts our privacy story, our compliance story, our ethical story even, when it comes to sharing and publishing data. And on the other side, we shouldn't just say, oh, this uses differential privacy, so everything's fine, and we don't have to look at it closely to make sure that the basics are also covered.
Yeah, because I'm glad you described that whole other side of the coin, because I was thinking about PKI and I mean, super difficult to deploy at scale, especially, right? And a lot of room for error. And then you have the, by the way, I posted my key in GitHub anyway, so anybody can access it, the decryption regardless. And then you have the whole, to the data access point, if you're not putting controls around the data itself. And then that middle layer, the business logic, right? Even if you have the best processes at either end, if you're exposing them in different ways in the middle through the logic that exposes the data,
absolutely,
all is not
in the NIST guideline. They even have this. Yeah, in the NIST guideline, they even go sort of one level below, and the very bottom of the pyramid, of the conceptual pyramid they have, is the most privacy preserving system is the one where you don't collect the data in the first place. So even if you're using all of these, fancy techniques, if what you want to do is, completely minimize your privacy risk, your compliance risk, do good by your users, you should only collect the bare minimum you need to, have the data. You shouldn't collect data that you don't need just because you can. And I really love that, even in the guideline, that's you would think that's not the main topic. This is still the fundamental basis of all privacy work, right? Be responsible with what you collect in the first place, even if you consider yourself as part of the trusted circle, not the attacker.
Yeah. So let's wrap here, and then unless there's something else you want to share before you go, you can certainly do that. But I want to touch on how this fit into an organization's operations. How disruptive is a change to adopt the guidelines that are being defined? Do apps have to be rewritten? Do databases have to be redeployed, restructured? I don't know. I mean, I can go up and down the whole stack, right? But how impactful is this?
I think it's mostly impactful for the use cases in which you're using anonymization. Like for the use cases that were already identified as we are sharing data with third parties, we are publishing data to the world, or even we are maybe anonymizing some data so we can keep it forever in our own systems and still be within our compliance obligations. So this is where differential privacy is going to improve the privacy and compliance story there. For all of the stages around data collection, access controls, and so on, this is not going to be really any change. It's really going to be about the use cases of data sharing, data publication, maybe data retention. One thing that we observe at Tumult Labs is, we see our customers adopt differential privacy, and the way it typically works is they have a particularly tricky data release that they're maybe not comfortable with doing, and they're like, oh, if we use differential privacy, this would make us more comfortable about doing this. And then they go and they hire us for helping them do a feasibility study and or a pilot, and then we show them here's what you can do, here's what you can publish, here what's your privacy risk, here's what the utility of this, the business value it gives you, etc. And then once they start doing that, they realize, oh, this can actually work in practice. Now here's 5 other use cases that we want, that where we would be interested in either replacing our existing anonymization methodology that is either we don't really feel good about, or it's just not giving us the accuracy and the utility that we would like. Let's try to see if we can do something better with differential privacy. Or we have these things that we wanted to do for a long time, but we couldn't because it felt too iffy from a privacy or compliance standpoint. But if we have a rock solid compliance story using differential privacy, this would make us feel much better about doing this. So let's try to do that to, increase business value, accomplish more objectives, and so on. The one place that we've seen that I can talk about, because that's what we do is obviously confidential, is with the Wikimedia Foundation. We started helping them publish statistics about which web pages from Wikipedia which articles from Wikipedia were most visited. And now, since we started doing this one pilot with them 2 years ago, since then they've published, I think, 4, 5, or 6 new data releases, because now they understand how it works. They can systematize the process, and they can publish more data and share more data and faster than they used to do, because one of the advantages of differential privacy, besides all of the mathematical stuff, is that it gives you a systematic way of handling data releases. It gives you a framework that it simplifies, it makes some things that are very fuzzy, like how dangerous it is what I'm doing, and how much utility am I getting out of that? What can I tell the people who are receiving the data about what has been done to the data? It simplifies a lot of this stuff. So once we train data analysts and engineers to do one differential privacy release, then they feel empowered to do 2, 3, and then people start identifying proactively new use cases that unlock values for the organization. And so this is what we are seeing, and this is what makes me super excited about being in this space.
Well, it's a point that I try to end with, or at least touch on in every episode, which is there's an opportunity for technology and risk mitigation and controls to actually enable business to take place safely and securely. And it seems like one of those opportunities for sure to unlock some things that weren't possible before. So I love it. Well, Damien, it's a pleasure to meet you. I know for me, it seems like a lot, but I'm sure we only scratched the surface with this. So we'll leave links to your profile. Folks can get in touch with you there. And of course, I'm gonna link to SP 800-226 and the post from Katarina, who shed some light on this as well. And yeah, another area for people to investigate and learn and adopt and apply. It seems like we have an opportunity to do some really cool stuff here.
Yeah, it sounds good. And if any of your listeners, is interested in either, has follow-up questions about this stuff, or is some of the stuff I said about like, oh, I want to share or publish some data, but I can't for compliance reasons. Like if that resonates with you, come talk to us. We're pretty good at solving this kind of stuff.
Very good. Thank you, Damien. And thanks to everybody for listening and watching. And of course, please share with your friends and enemies and subscribe and stay tuned. Many more conversations here on Redefining Cybersecurity. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. Thanks again for the invitation, Sean.
Devo unlocks the full value of machine data for the world's most instrumented enterprises. The Devo Data Analytics Platform addresses the explosion in volume of machine data and the crushing demands of algorithms and automation. Learn more at devo.com. Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Redefining Cybersecurity with Sean Martin, part of the ITSP Magazine podcast network. If you learned something new and this conversation made you think, then share this show and itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to connect your brand with our conversations, you can sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.